Bhakti Pradam Yakya Yukti Vichakshanan Bhagavato Vishishta Shakya Sada Vandehang Tripurari Namakayating Sri Bhakti Vedantinam Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva cha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Ajanolambita Bhujao Kanakavatatao Sankirtanaika Pitaro Kamalaya Takshao Vishwambarao Dvijavarao Yugadharma Palao Vande Jagapriyakaro Karunavataro Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityanando Sodito Godadaye Pushpavanto Chitro Shandotamonudo Vandeham Shri Ramakrishna Abhaya Charana Sukho Sukado Paramanando Sundaro Subalo Priyo He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vandana Karite Mui Kata Shakti Dhari Tamo Buddhi Doshe Mui Dambamatra Kori Tatapi Mukera Bhagya Manera Ulas Doshakshami Modame Koroni Jadas. So welcome everybody. Yeah, it's really good to be back after it's been a little while on these type of Vivek series. And so for today, it's been a desire of mine for a while to do a deeper study on Srila Narottam Das Thakur's Prema Bhakti Candrika. Some of you may have heard of this songbook. And so I thought that this type of a Vivek series would be a good opportunity to kind of like combine with that study and get started and kind of take our time with it too, with different sessions. So we're going to spend today's session on the first song of Prema Bhakti Candrika. I'll give a little intro to the book itself. And then hopefully in future sessions, we can explore the other songs. So as most of you will be aware, I'm sure, Srila Narottam Das Thakur, the author, is a great saint and acharya or teacher in Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And although in the interest of time, we won't explore his life thoroughly today, but if you aren't familiar with him, then I highly recommend reading about him yourself. Very interesting biographies available online. But in a nutshell, he was in the generation of Gaudiya devotees after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the 1500s. And he was a disciple of Lokanath Das Goswami. So he was an associate of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Lokanath Das Goswami. I've even heard, I'm not sure where it comes from, but I've heard it said that Mahaprabhu told Lokanath Goswami that he would have a disciple who will manifest a unique style of kirtan that will captivate all human beings. So it's quite interesting. Obviously, we have his songs and like that, but even if you study Mridanga, if anyone has studied Mridanga, there are schools of Mridanga that particularly follow in Narottam Das's line. So great contributions to kirtan from many angles of vision, many meanings of the word kirtan. And so he studied, Srila Narottam Das Thakur, he studied under Jiva Goswami actually, alongside Shamananda Prabhu and Srinivasacharya. And along with these great devotees, he was very instrumental in spreading the teachings of Goswamis, of the Goswamis, especially in Bengal. And so although Srila Narottam Das Thakur, he made many contributions to our Sampradaya, he's particularly renowned for the songs that he wrote, because his songs contain the teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he took the essence of these teachings and he put them into poetry, along with his own heartfelt expressions about those same teachings and his own spiritual aspirations also. So there's a lot contained in his songs. And as we know, I'm sure if anyone who studied any of the Goswami's writings, which of course delineates Mahaprabhu's teachings, They're vast, and sometimes in places they may be difficult to understand. But Srila Narottam Das Thakur, he's taken these teachings and he's made them more accessible, even to the general public. He said he made them especially, he wrote these songs especially for the masses of Bengal. So there's a lot in there. I couldn't find a source for this quote other than the Lilamrita, but Srila Prabhupada, or Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, he said to have said, at least according to the Lilamrita, that the prayers of Narottam Das Thakur, the sound of them is above the material platform. It's directly from the spiritual platform, and there's no need of understanding the language. It's just like a thunder burst. Everyone can hear the sound of thunder. There's no misunderstanding. And similarly, these songs are above the material platform, and they crack like thunder within your heart. And so I'm sure anyone who's spent time with Srila Narottam's songs can likely attest to the effect that they have on the heart. They're very powerful, these songs. And probably his most famous works, Prarthana, and the book that we're going to study today, which is Sri Prema Bhakti Candrika. And so Prema Bhakti Candrika literally means the rays of the moonlight of loving devotional service, or Prema Bhakti. So we often hear in the scripture and other places, the comparison of material existence to be like a fire, consumes us to the point of getting burnt over and over. And I'm sure in different ways we've experienced that. And so the teachings given in Prema Bhakti Candrika, they cool us down, and they give us some shelter from the harsh effects of the world and give an opportunity to become more absorbed in Krishna Bhakti. The title's also been described another way by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. He says, the name of this book is Sri Prema Bhakti Candrika, as it's like moon rays on the path of loving devotional service. Just as a confused traveler who has lost his way in a dense forest filled with ferocious animals is clearly directed to his destination by a quickly rising moon, similarly, the various pure processes of sadhana mentioned in this book are like the nectarian rays of the moon-like devotional service that can clearly direct a conditioned soul who has forgotten his real identity and fallen into this material world full of mundane desires to achieve the lotus feet of Radha Madhav. So, in more recent times, there's a nice explanation from Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, but in more recent times, we've also seen this highlighted, the importance of Srila Narottam Das Thakur's songs. It's said that Srila Gaura Das Babaji, he would advise aspirants of bhakti that they should go to the marketplace with 5 annas, that was a currency at the time, anna, go to the marketplace and purchase 2 books, Prarthana and Sri Prema Bhakti Candrika, both by Srila Narottam Das Thakur. And he said that if you read them daily, you'll develop love of Krishna. And I've also heard that Srila Gaura Das Babaji's disciple, the famous Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he would also instruct many of his disciples to daily read Sri Prema Bhakti Candrika. So there's a lot to be gained from this book. There's a lot of importance with this book, it seems, in our sampradaya, this collection of songs. And there is some commentaries, the most famous commentaries on the book by Srila Madana-mohana Das, who was a grandson of Srila Srinivas Acharya, and also Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. I personally have never been able to find an English version of Radha-mohan Prabhu's commentary. So if anyone who's hearing this happens to come across a version, please do send it on. But we do have access to a translation of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary. So we'll refer to that at times in this series, both today and in future sessions too. And so, like most of you, I've sang many of Srila Narottam Das Thakur's songs along with devotees, in different places. But until a few years ago, I'd never really read any of his songbooks sequentially from cover to cover and to see the flow and this kind of thing. And at this particular time, a few years ago, I started to notice references to Prema Bhakti Candrika coming up quite a lot in classes, especially classes I was hearing from my Guru Maharaj. And then one day, around that same time, I also asked my Guru Maharaj a question regarding lower qualities. And in his response, our Guru Maharaj referenced Prema Bhakti Candrika. And so to me, that was like a hint and the final hint that I needed, that, okay, maybe I should sit down and read the book and take a look. And so when I did, I ended up really liking it a lot, actually, more than I was expecting. So for a long time after that, I actually started to incorporate it into my morning sadhana. So I would read a song each day, each morning, and then when I'd gone through the 9 songs, so 9 days later, I guess, then I'd start again, just to kind of get a feel for the flow and imbibe what I could. Unfortunately, more recently, I've lost that practice for many reasons, mostly time constraints, but I do miss it. And so I'm hoping these studies also, going a bit deeper into them, will inspire myself to pick it up again, getting back into that habit. But while I was doing it and becoming more familiar with the text, I could see more and more how Srila Narottam Das Thakur, apart from expressing his own devotional aspirations, he really had expertly condensed the Goswami's teachings on the path of bhakti into his songs, and Rag Bhakti in particular. So interestingly, it's more than a do this or do that to practice bhakti. That's there too. He certainly gives suggestions, do this, do that, and so on. Very useful instructions. But you also find in these songs many of the moods and attitudes that are required to change our angle of vision. They're expressed in these songs in a way that help us develop more of a desire to really imbibe and deepen these moods in ourselves. So to some degree, personally speaking, I can see why Srila Prabhupada would say that these songs are above the material platform and they crack like thunder within your heart. Because I personally have found in those dips in bhakti that many of us may find while we're in Anishta Bhajana Kriya or unsteady practice, when the practice is up and down, I found to read meditatively this Prema Bhakti Candrika is a really nice way to recalibrate and receive inspiration to keep moving on and not let the dips take you down too far and so on. So hopefully this series will inspire your own reading of the songs and also give myself a kickstart to start reading them again too. So today, we're just going to focus on the first song because even with the time today, there won't be enough to do justice to the amount of things that can be derived just from one song. So we'll do our best, but we'll probably be squeezing quite a bit in. And then we'll dedicate future sessions to the next song sequentially. And that'll keep us going for a while, I think. And so most of you will be familiar with the first part of Song 1, often titled Guru Vandana. Many temples, especially, for example, ISKCON temples, they include the first 4 verses of this song as part of the morning program. So sometimes they're called the Guru Puja prayers or Sri Guru Charana Padma, of course, from the lyrics. But actually, the whole of the first song written by Srila Narottam, they contain 10 verses. So there's actually 10 verses to this first song. And these 10 verses, they've been split into subsections themselves. And so this is the structure that we're going to follow today. So those 3 sections, first is Sri Guru Mahima, or the glories of the spiritual master. So Mahima means greatness or glory. So this first song extols the glories of the spiritual master, the greatness of the spiritual master, the Guru. And then the second section is Sri Vaishnava Mahima, or the glories of the Vaishnav. And particularly within that section, the glories of Srila Rupa Goswami and Srila Sanatana Goswami are highlighted. And then the last section is Shuddha Bhakti Tattva, or truth about pure devotional service. So before starting any great work, we see all the time, Vaishnavas offer their respects to their teachers. And so naturally, Srila Narottam Das Thakur has also done so in his first song. He's offering his respects to his teacher, to his guru. But more than paying homage, Srila Narottam Das Thakur, he's also showing the gateway to entering everything else that he's going to talk about, namely Prema Bhakti and the means to attain it. We'll see at the end of this song, Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra are highlighted. And of course, these are often said to be the guiding lights on the path to pure love, or Prema Bhakti. So in this song, it makes sense. Srila Narottam Das Thakur has really brought that out, especially in regard to the Guru. So because of time, rather than sing all the way through the song, I'll just chant the section that we're going to study, and then read the translation, and then we can discuss a little on that section before moving on. And so we'll start with Sri Guru Mahima, or the glories of the spiritual master, Guru Vandana. So, Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma Bando Mui Savadana Mate Jahara Prasade Bhai Bhava Toriya Jai Krishna Prapti Hoi Jaha Hoite Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitete Koribo Aikya Arna Kori Ho Mane Asha Shri Guru Charane Rati Eise Uttamagati Jai Prasade Pure Sarva Asha Chakshu Dandilo Jai Janme Janme Prabhu Se Divyangyan Hriday Prokashito Prema Bhakti Jaha Hoite Avidya Vinasha Jate Vede Gai Jaha Charito Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adama Janara Bandhu Lokanath Lokera Jivana Haha Prabhu Koro Doya Deho More Padachaya Ebe Jasha Kushuk Tribhuvana. So the lotus feet of the spiritual master are the abode of pure devotional service. I bow down to those lotus feet with great care and attention. My dear brother, or my dear mind, it is through the grace of the spiritual master that we cross over this material existence and obtain Krishna. Make the teachings from the lotus feet of the spiritual master one with your heart, and do not desire anything else. Attachment to the lotus feet of the spiritual master is the best means of spiritual advancement. By his mercy, all desires for spiritual perfection are fulfilled. He who has given me the gift of transcendental vision is my Lord birth after birth. By his mercy, divine knowledge is revealed within the heart, bestowing Prema Bhakti and destroying ignorance. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. O spiritual master, ocean of mercy, and friend of the fallen souls, you are the teacher of everyone and the life of all people. O master, be merciful unto me and give me the shade of your lotus feet. May your glories now be proclaimed throughout the three worlds. So very beautiful. And of course, as I say, a whole number of series of classes would be needed to really explore the deep ocean of Guru Tattva. So I'm not going to attempt to squeeze too much in the interest of, so that we can look at other sections also. But let's discuss a few things. And as we said earlier, Srila Narottam Das Thakur, he's really showing us this important principle and gateway on our path to Krishna Prema, the Guru. We know in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, for example, the first three angas or limbs of bhakti are related to the Guru, the surrender and service of the Guru, starting with Adao Guru Padashray, or accepting the shelter of the lotus feet of a spiritual master. So in his commentary, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he says, in order to enter the temple of devotional service, one must first take shelter of the lotus feet of the spiritual master. And in that same commentary, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he points out that Sri means that the spiritual master has all spiritual opulence. So often we hear, right, we don't just hear Guru even, often we hear Sri Guru, Sri Guru. So he says that the spiritual master is endowed with the potency to deliver his disciples from the grip of nescience or ignorance and take them to the lotus feet of Sri Krishna. So in other words, he says that the spiritual master is the treasury of loving devotional service. And as we know, there are many types of guru and even conceptions about guru, but we want the conception that is most conducive for selfless love, for Prema, someone who has love for Krishna. And so we want to approach such a person sincerely and humbly, inquire from them, serve from them, like we see Krishna points out in the Gita, in the 4th chapter. So this cultivation of selfless service, it helps our hearts become more and more of a fertile ground so that spiritual knowledge can really grow. And this is how our Guru Maharaj sometimes points out that this is how spiritual wisdom, it really chooses to reveal itself to us, because this spiritual wisdom is living wisdom in and of itself, and chooses personally to reveal as he chooses, not that we can just capture it by our intellectual ability. And so the more we can make our hearts fertile ground, the better. And so we want to find that person where we feel our personal highest prospect will be realized. Krishna is singular. We hear the singular Godhead, but has many representatives. And so Krishna sends someone who our hearts resonate with and will be able to best facilitate our progression in bhakti, if that's what we desire. So naturally, representing God, being sent by God in many ways, such a person is shown great honor. And we see Srila Narottam doing this in his prayers, he bowing down, and the kind of prayers that he offers to his guru there. And so where we see this principle of guru appearing in the world, we also want to be able to show the greatest of respect. Of course, we should show respect to everybody, but really the greatest of respect, it's we should show where we see this principle of guru appearing. And there's great power in approaching such a person, because it can even give us the qualification or adhikar to enter the path of bhakti. And of course, the adhikar, the qualification to enter the path of bhakti, is shraddha, is faith. It's said in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So the faith of great devotees overflows and touches us in such a way that we also, what is this bhakti all about? I should look deeper into this bhakti. I'm sure we've all had this experience in different ways. Whereas generally, it's thought that one would pass through dharma, for example, or religion, to be able to study Vedanta, what to speak of beyond, and work their way up the yoga ladder, if you will. But just by association of such great souls, we get direct entrance to the gateway of bhakti. And so another interesting note from this song is that Srila Narottam Das Thakur, he knows what he wants from his guru, actually, pure devotional service. And we see this emphasized many times throughout this songbook. I gave a series last year, I think it was, called Refining Your Desire. And we explored this point that we should more and more refine our spiritual desires as we progress, and we get more knowledge to know in what direction to refine them to, and so on. And of course, take some time along the way to do some internal reflection and ask ourselves, what do I really want from life? What is it that I want? Am I going in the direction that I want to get what I want, and so on? And we won't go too much into that now, but you can watch the series if you like. I think it's on the YouTube channel. You can search Refining Your Desire. But the point being that like attracts like. And so we want to more and more refine our ideal to a place where Krishna Prema, or selfless divine love, that attracts even Krishna himself, that's our exclusive aspiration. Of course, that's no small thing, not something we can just click our fingers overnight, but we want it that Krishna Prema really is our exclusive aspiration. And if we cultivate our sincerity and ideal, especially through the practices of bhakti, like chanting the Maha Mantra, for example, then we have nothing to fear, actually, even while traversing the land of gurus. And we can be confident we'll be given what we need so we can make progress in the form of Sri Guru. And it may not always be easy to recognize Sri Guru, even though, many qualities to look out for have been given by the Shastra and the Goswamis. For example, a famous verse that's often quoted by the Goswamis is in the Bhagavatam in the 11th canto, where Krishna, he points out that scriptural expertise and being equipoised or above the human passions are two qualifications. So the first thing to look out for, you could say, Shabde Pare Chanishnatam. That is, that they've heard from revelation or Shastra, and they're skillful at explaining the meaning of the Vedas. And also they will also have realization of these things too. And then also Upashama Ashrayam. That is, they're equipoised in regard to material affairs, or in other words, our Guru Maharaj sometimes expresses it that they've risen above human passions, and they're detached. They're not under the control of anger and greed and so on. And arguably, these are more easy ways to observe in some ways. Than relative to, for example, trying to know if a guru really has love of Krishna in their heart. I mean, how can we really know unless we've realized that ourselves too, right? But we can observe these things. But even these qualifications, which we certainly should look out for, even these, they're arguably open to interpretation, right? Especially if we don't have much scriptural knowledge ourselves, and we don't see the guru in situations where their ability to remain equipoised is tested. I know, personally speaking, I remember my first few years of bhakti, it felt like everyone had so much scriptural knowledge because they could speak things. But obviously, as you gain more scriptural knowledge yourself, you realize, some may have more of an understanding than others and so on. But so although that could be left also, to interpretation in some ways, but not to be neglected, of course. But our Guru Maharaj sometimes explains that our inner necessity is unambiguous. In other words, we know our own hearts and our own desires, especially the more we pay attention to them. So our Guru Maharaj has pointed out that the combination of our inner necessity, sincerity, and previous bhakti samskars, or impressions from prior encounters with bhakti, these combined will determine our ability to connect with the principle and person of Sri Guru. And so even if, maybe all those things aren't in place in the deepest way, so I'm sure many of us have had this experience, and I know personally I've had this experience, that our choice may turn out to be less than ideal. But if we're sincere in our pursuit of Krishna Prema, then we'll be better prepared to choose again in the future and be guided further in bhakti. And so the point being that faith and devotion given in that direction, in the pursuit of Prema Bhakti, that's not lost. Our Guru Maharaj sometimes says that, mistakes are only as bad as we don't learn from them. So it's really beneficial with intelligence, of course, to give ourselves according to the sadhu sangha that Krishna has given us at the moment, where we're receiving the most inspiration and nourishment that helps us move forward in our bhakti. And so where we find that, where we can observe that and experience that, we want to give our hearts, and Krishna accepts our feeling. And so the Guru is also pointed out to be a manifestation of Krishna within our hearts, or the Chaitya Guru. Chaitanya Charitamrita also explains this, being a representation of the Guru within the heart, or the super soul, and so on. So point being, we should have an idea of what we want. What does our heart really desire? And this will be refined the more we hear the teachings from our Guru and other sadhus, and making those words one with our heart, as our hearts become purified, that, actually, I don't want something temporary. I want something that is so beautiful as is being described, like Krishna Prem. So the words of the Guru, they're very potent and lead us to Krishna in a deeper and deeper way, the more they become our life, the more that they become our soul, and so on. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he points out in his commentary that the word vakya, when Narottam uses the word vakya, or words, that really these words, they refer to instructions on prema rasa tattva, or the science, the truths of prema rasa, or loving relationship to Krishna in the purest form. So Shravanam is often emphasized, as we know, hearing from the spiritual master, hearing about Uttamagati, or the highest destination, the best of all obtainable things, which of course we understand to be prema, or service in selfless pure love. And in this pursuit of prema, the Guru guides the disciple according to the essence of the scriptures, so that they can remove the doubts of the disciple according to the scripture, so that the student can make further progress and deepen their own faith. And of course, as we know, Shraddha, like we say, faith, that's what moves us forward in the practices of bhakti. So the Guru inspires the student, but in such a way also, and this is quite an important thing, that the student themselves are able to make sense of the scriptural teachings and apply them in their lives themselves. It's not always the case that the Guru is there 24/7. Maybe we have the good fortune to live in an ashram with a Guru and these kind of things, but many don't. But that obviously doesn't bar us from making progress in bhakti and like this. But a good Guru, a good teacher, will be able to inspire a student to make sense also of the scriptural teachings and how to apply them in the lives themselves. So at some point, they can fly. Not that they ever lose guidance. They'll always be, we're students forever and these kind of things. But I guess receiving guidance on a deeper way as one makes progress in these kind of things, so that the Guru makes an effort to nourish our faith in the scripture, in the scriptural conclusions and ideal, and shows us how to apply it in our times, our circumstances, so on, based on scriptural reasoning and their own realization. So the Guru gives transcendental vision, especially helping us more and more to see through the eyes of Shastra, but ultimately through the eyes of love, as divine knowledge is revealed in the heart. So as we more and more both see through the eyes of Shastra and live through the eyes of Shastra, then more divine knowledge is revealed in the heart, and ultimately love, pure love, is revealed in the heart, and these things. And so the Guru helps us change our angle of vision. Sometimes said, not that we're not takers, for example, sometimes described like that, but the best form of ourselves, if you will, is being givers, not takers. So the Guru helps change our angle of vision in that regard. It gives us the perspective of the temporary nature of material manifestations, but takes it further and shows us that all these things that we experience have a purpose in relation to Bhagavan, in relation to God. So relational knowledge. And so the type of Guru we often hear referred to is Satguru. You might have heard this term Sadguru, or eternal Guru. And that's the person teaching about that which is eternal. So we know the Atma, for example, the soul, the conscious entity, is eternal. But more than that, in Bhakti, we want someone teaching about the life of the soul, the life of the Atma, or in other words, Bhakti. Not only teaching what the soul is, what spirit is, but beyond that, what the soul does in its highest prospect. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he points out, the words Divya Jnana refer to the knowledge through which one can learn how to worship Krishna. It is understood that such knowledge can be revealed in one's heart only by the mercy of Sri Guru. The word Divya Jnana also means transcendental knowledge in the form of initiation into the teachings of Sri Krishna. It is stated in Hari Bhakti Vilas, when one is initiated into the knowledge of Krishna and his relationship with Krishna is revived, it is to be understood that he is educated in transcendental knowledge. So even in the higher realms, when a relationship with Krishna is established, the Guru is still there in eternity and is involved in our service with their own particular mood of relationship with Krishna. So birth after birth, Narottam says, right? Whether in this world or in the spiritual world, in the practicing stage or the perfected stage, the Guru is always worshipable. So Srila Narottam Das Thakur, he really highlights this in these verses. And as I say, so many seminars can be given to expand on so many crucial points on Guru Tattva. I'm really scratching the surface here. But so we can move on. We'll end this section on the glories of the Guru with a nice quote that I very much like. It's been attributed to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, but I've not actually been able to find exactly where it comes from. Maybe someone here knows, but nonetheless, it's a really beautiful and apt quote that I think kind of sums a lot of these things up, and a good meditation on the glory of the Guru. So it says there, one who can protect me from death, that is the material life, is Guru. One who can protect me from the fear of death is Guru. One by going to whom I do not have to go to anyone else, by listening to whom I do not have to listen to anyone else, is Guru. The reservoir of grace, whom the Supreme Lord, the personification of the Supreme Good, has made responsible for looking after my welfare, is my Guru. One by whose grace I can get rid of my controlling ego is Guru. One who brings the revealed truth to us, who by showering us with such truth can make us humbler than a blade of grass and more tolerant than a tree, is Guru. One who makes us respectful to others without having any desire for respect from others, who can manifest transcendental kirtan in our mouths by transferring his own potency of the Lord, is Guru. Only the lotus feet of Sri Guru can free us from the shackles of illusion. One who gives me transcendental knowledge that all the people of the world are respectable and worshipable by me, that the whole world is meant for service to Guru, and everyone is my Guru, that I am a servitor of Krishna, and the service to Krishna is my only duty, is Sri Guru. So very, very beautiful quote. And then that leads us into the next section, our other gurus, if you will, Sri Vaishnava Mahima, or the glories of the Vaishnava. So I'll just chant those verses. Vaishnava charana renu bhushana koriyatanu yaha hoite anubhava hoy marjana hoy bhajana sadhu sange anukshana ajnana avidya parajay jaya sanatana rupa prema bhakti rasa kupa yugala ujvala mayatanu yahara prasade loka pasarilo sabashoka prakata kalapataru janu Prema Bhakti Riti Yoto Nija Grante Suvekata Likiya Chendui Mahashai Yahara Shravana Hoite Premanande Base Chite Yugala Madhura Rasa Shrai Yugala Kishora Prema Lakshabana Yeno Hema Heno Dhana Prakashilo Yara Jaya Rupa Sanatana Deho More Prema Dhana Seiratana More Gole Mahara. So the translation, one should decorate the body with the dust from the lotus feet of the Vaishnavas, because by this one can achieve transcendental realizations. By constantly associating with the devotees, one's cultivation of devotional service is purified, and one can conquer nescience. All glories to Srila Rupa Goswami and Srila Sanatana Goswami, who are the reservoirs of loving devotional service, being the personifications of the highest transcendental mellows directed towards Sri Sri Radha Krishna. By their mercy, a desire tree has been generated in this world that can relieve the distress and lamentation of all people. The various characteristics of loving devotional service, Prema Bhakti, have been elaborately described by these two great personalities in their books. One who hears these descriptions feels transcendental happiness in his heart or her heart, and takes shelter of the sweet divine couple. The loving affairs of the young divine couple are like refined gold. O Sri Rupa, Sri Sanatan, you have unfolded this treasure to me, and I will wear these jewels of love as a garland around my neck. So, as with Sri Guru, there's not enough time in the universe to speak and glorify elaborately the glories of the Vaishnavas. You can just ask Ananta Shesh, he'll tell you. But as we know, one of the most important instructions on the bhakti path is taking shelter of sadhu sangha, being with devotees and discussing and hearing topics about Krishna and his devotees. And the point of the association purifying us and helping us conquer nescience relates to the point of refining our desire. That the more we hear about pure bhakti, what it is and what it isn't, which is what the Vaishnavas speak about generally, the more we can refine our aspiration in our hearts in the direction of Krishna Prema. So interestingly, Srila Narottam, he's used both the word ajnana, or ignorance, but also avidya, or nescience is sometimes translated. Also has the meaning of ignorance and so on. But associating with Vaishnavas, worshipping them, serving them, and hearing from them, this can defeat both of these, avidya and ajnana. So we might understand the concept of ignorance as not having knowledge and then receiving it. So I mean that's quite clear, right? But in his commentary, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says avidya in this case refers to the desires of four purposes of life: dharma, artha, kama, and moksha, or religion, economic development or acquirement of wealth, sensual enjoyment, and ultimately liberation, these four purposes of human life. And so it's interesting that this distinction is made. And so Narottam, as Srila Narottam has made, use both these terms, because even from the Shastra, the Veda, the Shastra, of course, called the Veda, which of course is nothing but knowledge. In the Veda, we can learn about the four purposes of human life and how to attain them in accordance with the Shastra. But in pure bhakti, of course, even these are neglected in pursuance of the fifth goal of life that we've been speaking about, Prema. So not only will sadhu sangha remove our ignorance by giving us knowledge, but also helps us refine our desire in pursuit of something higher. You know, by constantly hearing katha, for example, we can see these traces in our own hearts that kind of stop us really being the full embrace our full potential, to put it in that way, and help us see these things so that we can work also to remove them from contaminating our own practice. And so much can be said on Vaishnavas in general. But Srila Narottam specifically highlights two Vaishnavas in particular, Srila Rupa Goswami and Srila Sanatan Goswami. As we know, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's gift to the world is the love of Krishna that the inhabitants of Vrindavan embody, right? The Vrajvasi's selfless love and complete absorption in Krishna is what Gaudiya Vaishnavism is all about. And Mahaprabhu particularly instructed Srila Rupa Goswami and Srila Sanatan Goswami to write volumes of devotional scriptures about the nature of this love of Krishna. And they, of course, could do so to the highest degree because they themselves are steeped in the same love. Actually, they're Vrajvasis themselves, they're residents of Vrindavan themselves. And as Srila Narottam Das Thakur points out, they're Ujvala Rasa Tanu, or the personification of Ujvala Ras, or the romantic mood, like this, you know, they're Rupa Manjari, and so on. So these Goswamis took the task up with great enthusiasm, and they gifted the world with so much detail about what Prema Bhakti is and the means to attain Prema Bhakti, what it's all about, and so on. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his commentary, he says, that is why even today, many living entities are forgetting their lamentation and misery by drinking from the well of mellows in the form of devotional scriptures composed by Sri Rupa and Sri Sanatana Goswamis, and are being satisfied by relishing these devotional mellows. Srila Narottam Das Thakur has addressed Sri Rupa and Sri Sanatana Goswamis as the personifications of the desire trees of devotional service. Therefore, it is most auspicious to take shelter of their lotus feet. I like the point I've often heard our Guru Maharaj make, that in our Bhakti school, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he's the founder of the Sampradaya. He's the founder of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, for example. And all the gurus who come after him represent him, of course. You know, sometimes we hear like the microcosmic guru, macrocosmic guru. So the microcosmic guru or the individual gurus, sometimes they're referred to as Vyasti gurus. They all represent the eternal guru or Krishna, who is otherwise known as the Samashti guru, the collective guru. And so in our Sampradaya, which aspect of Krishna? Well, it is Krishna himself, of course, but this Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he's this Samashti guru or macrocosmic guru of our particular Sampradaya or school. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he empowered the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan to be the architects of our Sampradaya. Sometimes you may hear them referred to as the Shastra Gurus, because they've written the Bhakti Shastras for us. When we speak about Bhakti Shastra, you know, really we're speaking about the Goswamis' writings for the most part, because they're said to have taken all the texts that are universally accepted as revelation by all schools of Vedanta. So all the Veda, you know, and all the schools accept the Veda, the main texts of the Veda, both monistic and theistic. So they've taken all these revelations, and especially have drawn from the Srimad Bhagavatam, which of course said to be the crest jewel of the Vedas. And they've written texts, and also quoting from these other texts, but written texts themselves that have become our scriptural canon. So they've given these foundations for the Sampradaya. And so all gurus in this school, they're carrying on this important work of the Goswamis by explaining it according to time, place, circumstance, so on, bringing out new implications, bringing light to its implications, but also bringing out new realizations about it. We discussed previously when discussing the 4th chapter of the Gita, you know, is of course a big task in itself. So the Goswamis, they've given this Achintya Abhed Tattva, you know, inconceivably, simultaneously one and different. They formed a whole school from that, the school of Vedanta, Gaudiya Vedanta. And the gurus following in this line, they work to explain it and distribute it. And so Srila Narottam, he also follows in these footsteps, and we'll see so many of the teachings of the Goswamis brought out in the songs that follow. And in this song, he's making it really explicit that the teachings come from their books, as well as glorifying their qualification for being able to transmit this knowledge in the first place. And so, interestingly, sometimes Prema Bhakti Candrika is sometimes known as the Sri Rupanuga Gita, because it contains the essence of all the teachings of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which of course are especially brought out systematically by Srila Rupa Goswami in texts like Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he says, the process of attaining loving devotional service and the process practiced by the pure devotees who have already attained loving devotional service are correctly and elaborately described by Sri Rupa and Sri Sanatana Goswamis in their books, such as Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Ujjwala Nilamani, Lalita Madhava, Vidagdha Madhava, Dhanakeli Kaumudi, Stavamala, and Sri Brihad Bhagavatamrita. By hearing and reciting these scriptures, the hearts of the devotees are merged in the ocean of loving ecstasy under the shelter of the sweet mellows of Sri Radha Madhav. And also, of course, on top of that, we have Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita by Srila Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami, who also took the essence from these writings of the Goswamis and presented it to the world. So may we also take advantage of these texts and those explaining these texts and develop the same selfless love that's described in there for Sri Sri Radha Krishna, which, as Srila Narottam points out, is the most precious thing in existence. He uses the example of gold, refined gold, or gold purified in 10,000 flames. He likes this analogy. I found it comes up again later in this songbook about gold purified in 10,000 flames. So I guess that was the purest thing he could think of, the greatest thing, in our material existence to kind of like compare it to. So again, so many classes can be given on the contributions of the Goswamis. And of course, many have been given. And on the Shabda Brahman website, there are many, many classes to go deeper into these topics. But in the interest of time, let's just quickly look at the final verses of the first song, because I can see we're getting quite on in time. And the next section is known as Shuddha Bhakti Tattva, or the truth about pure devotional service. So just 2 verses for this one. Bhagavata Shastra Marma Navavida Bhakti Dharma Sadai Koribo Susevana Anya Deva Shrayanai Tomare Kohilo Bhai E Bhakti Parama Bhajana Sadhu Shastra Guru Vakya Hridoye Koriya Aikya Satata Basibo Prema Maje Karminyani Bhakti Hina Ihake Koribo Bina Narutama E Tattva Gaje. So the translation: the 9 processes of devotional service are the essence of Srimad Bhagavatam. O brother and sister, the best method of attaining loving devotional service is to always engage in performing these 9 limbs of devotional service without taking shelter of the demigods. My desire is to have my heart purified by the statements of the Vaishnavas, scriptures, and spiritual master. And seeing the unity of these 3, I will always float in the ocean of love of God. I will be aloof from the bad association of the fruitive workers, karmis, mental speculators, jnanis, and the people devoid of devotional service. I, Narottam Das, sing this truth. Now again, many, many classes can and have been given on the 9 processes of devotional service, or Navalakshana Bhakti, as described by Sri Prahlad Maharaj, Shravanam, Kirtanam, and so on. I'm sure you're all familiar with those. We heard on Sunday our Guru Maharaj speak on Vandanam, prayer. So we want to be more and more absorbed in these direct practices of bhakti, taking exclusive shelter in Krishna, and not disrespecting the demigods, but understanding their position in relation to Krishna, and fully taking shelter of him in that process. And this also ties in to our discussion on Guru earlier. This rising above the human passions being a qualification to look out for in the Guru. We see a similar emphasis at the start of Upadeshamrita, or Nectar of Instruction. Sometimes, this book, that's how Prabhupada translated it, Nectar of Instruction, book by Srila Rupa Goswami. And the first verse there says, a sober person who can tolerate the urge to speak, the mind's demands, the actions of anger, and the urges of the tongue, belly, and genitals, is qualified to make disciples all over the world. And this text, Upadeshamrita, it goes further into other things that should be in place, but it starts with these things. The implication being that if these things are in place, there's confidence that the other things are too. And so, as we mentioned earlier, our Guru Maharaj often points out that to rise above these passions is actually miraculous, right? It's very rare you find anyone who's risen above these passions. And so we can't measure or recognize the love that one has for Krishna. But Guru Maharaj spoke a little about these kind of things on Sunday, interestingly. But the more love we have for something, the more attracted to it we are, the more attached to it we are. So in this world, the most tangible way that attraction to Krishna is expressed is through the 64 limbs of bhakti, especially through hearing and speaking the Bhagavatam and chanting Nam Kirtan. So although we can't directly measure love, we can observe how easy or difficult it is to move a person away from these practices, for example, move a person away from a discussion about Krishna. Not things remotely connected to Krishna, but Krishna himself directly. So to have come to such a place where one has risen above the passions, one must have taken shelter of Nam and the Bhagavatam in a very deep way and become so attracted and attached to them. And so Srila Narottam points out that this is the best method, like become attached to these practices. And so again, Shravanam, hearing, such an important limb of bhakti, it's especially emphasized because the statements of the Vaishnavas, the scriptures, and the Guru are highlighted at the conclusion. Guru Sadhu Shastra, I'm sure many of you heard this many times. This is our guiding light, the Guru Sadhu and Shastra. And in the translation we read, it said Srila Narottam's desire is to have his heart purified by these statements and see the unity of them. But sometimes also, the translation says, making the words of the Guru, Sadhus, and Shastras one with my heart, I constantly float and swim in the ocean of pure love. So ultimately, we want these statements to become one with our hearts. Of course, not artificially, but the more we get a taste for it and our own practice and our own realizations, the more and more we'll be able to embrace them and make them one with our hearts. And as we discussed, the more the desires in our hearts are refined in the direction of Krishna Prema, or selfless love, the better, and especially the more exclusive that becomes. So the more we hear about these things, the more we can reflect on how much have we really imbibed in our hearts. And our path is to make these teachings of the Goswamis, who ultimately only discuss pure bhakti. We want to make those teachings one with our hearts. And the Guru helps us in this direction by transmitting those teachings according to time, place, circumstance, and so on, and also helping us clear up our doubts and our misunderstandings so we can further embrace the teachings in our hearts and embrace the practices of those teachings. And of course, the Guru also embodies the teachings, setting an example for us to follow and so on. And as the tinges of karma and jnana and all other things are removed, hopefully, that will be the case, and I'm sure it will be, according to the process. And we'll also constantly float and swim in an ocean of pure love. So because I looking at the time, we should probably wrap up. I'd like to thank you for taking the time for hearing this, whether live or on the recording. And then next time that I have the opportunity for a Tattva Vivek class, we'll look at the next song, which is a personal favorite of mine. I very much like the next song, although we may need to break it into 2 sessions due to its length, because as you see, even with this song, we've gone the full hour. So I hope this has inspired you to sing these beautiful songs of Srila Narottam Das Thakur and go deeper into their meaning yourself. And I guess, yeah, if anyone has any questions or corrections or insights and so on, please, feel free to share now. You can unmute yourself, and Hare Krishna. And I'm just seeing the chat now that Sharada is saying she has a question. So yeah, please, Sharada.
Haribol is beautiful. I just want to confirm that what you talk about the 9 songs in the Sri Prema Bhakti Candrika, those 9 songs, can you just confirm that they would represent the 9 processes of devotional service? And also yes, do they?
I mean, I've never heard that personally. I wouldn't say a straight out no, but what I found is through those songs, different practices are brought out. But I don't think that like there's one song that you could say this is Shravanam, one Kirtanam. But I'd be open to hearing if someone has kind kind of drawn that parallel, but just personally, I've never seen that. Sorry.
Okay,
sorry, you had
thank
second
you.
point?
And also just that's okay, just a small one. In many of these songs, one who has composed it always says, "Oh mind," and it's like telling the mind what to do. So is that, saying Narottam Das Thakur, is it the heart telling the mind, or is it,
that's a nice, that's a nice insight.
What's happening?
Yeah, I would say, personally speaking, to my understanding, and just how he has written it and so on, I would say certainly, because sometimes, the translation is "oh brother," so we speak, or "oh sister," that he's speaking to all of us. And in many ways, that's clear that we can all derive so much from it. But also these songs, like Guru Maharaj was mentioning on Sunday, these are also the heartfelt expressions of these devotees. And so I would say that, when it's speaking about the mind, that it is Srila Narottam Das Thakur speaking to himself, because you find later in the later songs, he really brings out more of what his own personal aspiration is in Manjari Bhav, for example, and these kind of things. So throughout the song, he's speaking to himself like, I will only do this, I will only do that, and this will help me gain that great love of Radha Krishna. And so I guess it would be the conscious entity, the Atma, speaking to the mind. As we know, the mind can be tricky. It can go in all kinds of different directions and take us down rabbit holes that we may not want to go down. And so we want the intelligence to guide the mind, and that intelligence is best suited to guide the mind rather than be guided by the mind. The more transcendentalized it is, if you will, or in other words, the more it's refined through the intelligence of the Shastra. And so that's why sometimes Nishta, for example, the stage of steadiness, corresponds, with Shastric understanding and the ability to discriminate with the teachings and these kind of things. So that will help one. That will be guided by the Atma. If our desire is going back to refining our desire in the heart, if our desire really is Krishna Prema, and the more we hear about it, the more we develop a desire for that Krishna Prema, then the more we're going to want to utilize our intelligence and our mind in the direction of that, right? So I would say it's the Atma speaking to the mind like that.
Thank you. Yes, it's also helped me. It's nice to hear that we can actually use the songs that we're attracted to. Personally, I'm attracted to the Bengali songs, so therefore I go to the songs first, and then that can guide me to then reading the Shastras, and that helps me a lot. Something that I'm most attracted to, really, it's a tool to help me to then go to the Shastras instead of just going straight to read scriptures and learning it, as in academically. I use the songs a lot to guide me into then learning a lot. So anyway, Hare Krishna, thank you
Hare
so
Krishna.
much.
Thank you, Sharada. And so much can be said on that point, that the songs are so powerful. And like you say, because they're like condensed forms of the teachings too, like let's take something like Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. I mean, we can read this Prema Bhakti Candrika in a lot shorter time than the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. It doesn't mean we should neglect reading the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, but we can read it in much shorter time. So it gives us a chance to kind of meditate on those teachings, these things. And then as we study those other longer texts, if you will, we're kind of like drawing out more from them, which is nice. But another thing, because I like yourself, I also very much like these songs. And I remember speaking with Agni Dev Prabhu, and he was saying, this point that these songs were written for the common people, and I'm a common person. This is what Agni Dev Prabhu was saying, I'm a common person. So, they're written for people like me. And so I'm sure we can all relate to that, right? That, well, I'm not some great Vedantic scholar or this kind of thing. But I'm a common person, but I want Krishna Prema to some degree. And so let me take shelter of these songs to get some understanding of it, and it's a bit easier to sometimes understand these things through the songs, and also because they've given with the feeling of the devotees too. That there's a lot to be taken from that. Yeah. So thanks for your comments.
Thank you. Important for this age. Most important, like the kirtans. Yeah. Hare
Krishna.
That's
Thank
all.
you.
Thank you.
No problem. Anyone else like anything they'd like to share or bring up?
Haribol.
Haribol.
So you kind of said a similar thing, but I remember Guru Maharaj this year on his Vyasa Puja, he made a very nice connection between, like you also did, like between Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu and this song. That Sri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Satma, that like Uttama Bhakti begins at the feet of the Guru, and because like Ado Guru Padashray is like, that's the first limb of Uttama Bhakti, and he made many other nice connections there, but this just came to mind when you were speaking. And I like when you said that if we know what we want from the Guru, then we can move without fear, even in the land of Gurus, like as if the land of Gurus is something scary. I realized, yeah, actually it is if you're not clear about your about your like goal.
It's a vast world out there, right?
Yeah. And that also like relates to Bhakti, to the first limbs there in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, because like Vishrambhena Guru Seva, like to do like kind of fearless service, like Vishram, like with Vishramba, with confidence. And of course, for that you have to be clear about your desire too. Yeah, that's some thoughts.
Wonderful thoughts. Thank you. And I guess like you say, did you say it was the Vyasa Puja class? We can all go back and get some more of those insights. So thanks for that. But yeah, that's a really nice point. I like the point you made there. I didn't think so much of that connection when I was speaking about it, but that confidence aspect of it too, that you say, it's serving with confidence, isn't it? And that's really that's really brought out. So yeah, thanks, Sean.
Yeah, and then also just wanted to mention that there were a few just like brief comments of appreciation on YouTube also.
Oh, thank you.
Such as wonderful class and so beautiful and Hari Hari and Haribol. Haribol.
Jai, thank you all for being here, listening. That's what our process is about, right? Shravanam and Kirtan, I mean. So I guess, unless anyone else has anything they'd like to share or ask, I guess we'll wrap up. Give a second. Okay then. Well, thank you everybody. It's a pleasure, and I guess I'm not sure when the next time will be. It'll probably be a couple of months, I think, before I'm next give a class here. But then we'll continue the series. So it'll be very nice, hopefully. And yeah. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Hare Krishna.
Shriman Madana-mohana Prabhu ki jai.
Sadhu Sangha ki jai.